Hi AGP students, it's Rob Jensen, your Leadership Development course instructor, and welcome to lesson number 10 of the Leadership Development course for Conflict Management and Resolution. Well, today's class, we're going to be going over a number of things and making it to be in our last class. I do believe this one is probably the most difficult of them all. Just because we're dealing, or the subject of the topic we're dealing with, and in nature, tends to be sort of difficult for people to work with. With that, I think by equipping yourself with the knowledge that you're gaining today will certainly helping you in managing conflict, and just as well as how to kind of move through it and to improve with these sort of situations. However, it is sort of a maturity level thing, and sometimes with a conflict, it is a two-party situation in most instances, and one party may be trying to do things accordingly as well as they can, and the other party is not cooperating as well, which can make it pretty difficult. So with that said, today we're going to talk about what is conflict and kind of helping to define that. We're going to talk about the causes of conflict and what those mean. There's also the various types in which we have for social situations, and just as well as personal conflict styles, so how people tend to manage and deal with conflict. The benefits, which may be somewhat redundant from previous lessons, but it's always a good refresher. And then we've got interest-based relational process in which we'll go through, and then lastly the conflict resolution process. So with that said, we'll kind of move on and see what we'll have to say about what is conflict. So everyone always, everyone in their everyday lives has conflict, whether it's with your little brother, your big sister, whether it's with your parents or with a teacher. Maybe it's with a friend of yours or something, but conflict is simply, as we can put it, is just opposing ideas and actions of different entities resulting in an antagonistic state. So with that, you're dealing with conflict in every way, shape, form, in every day of your life in some ways. Some of it may be very minor in a sense, and it's something in which you kind of let roll off your back. Some of it is much bigger, where you choose to dig your heels in, or it may even be so far as separating and yourself from a particular individual and such. But one thing is for sure, that, as I kind of alluded to, conflict is inevitable. You will face conflict, and you will continue to face conflict, and there is no way around it. So it's best to understand how to deal with it, effectively in a way where it's not being an obstacle to what you want to accomplish, or whether it's a personal goal or whether it's a group goal that you have set out and want to achieve. But more importantly, how can you use conflict to better yourself and the group as well. Conflict, as I mentioned, is kind of leads to different points of view, something you very well understand, that every individual is different. And I think with the use of strengths, that goes so far as to show you how people tend to think and how they approach individual situations that could very well be quite different from you. So the point of view in which they bring to a particular problem or an issue should be able to show you how the background and sort of issues that they have at the forefront. So strengths is very good in that respect. Whether you know their top 5 or whether you've seen enough of their behaviors to try to formulate a couple of their top strengths, it's a really good way of kind of understanding that and their point of view, which is extremely important when trying to resolve conflict. And then also with conflict, it influences our actions and our behaviors and what we choose to do. Sometimes conflict and with it become more personal to us and can to affect our judgment. Sometimes conflict of the situation, and if we allow it to manifest and to fester in a sense, that it can um, uh, it can control a situation and try and maybe even limit the sort of options that you may have to operate with. So, I hope that's a good overview of that, of what is conflict, and you can see how it's prevalent within every day of our lives. Okay, so you may be wondering, what are the causes of conflict? And it can kind of be broken down in these three different areas that I believe will help you to better identify it. And that's really important when you're trying to solve situation, is what is really the problem at hand that you're having to work with. And a lot of times people fail to recognize that, and because of it, the situation continues to even worsen, or it may not just continue to carry on and create a long-lasting or effects that are undesirable for what you're trying to accomplish. So the first one is an economic conflict. And you have to think about, when it's economic, you have to think of resources and such, what you have available to you. So it might be personnel. It might be one group feels that they're being slighted because this group is getting more personnel than this group or something. Or maybe the personnel they feel is not up to par and such, that all the good talent is going to this group and all the subpar talent's going to that group. It could be over time, whether it's too much, too little. It could very easily be over money, since money tends to be a very limited resource in a number of groups and such. So you can see that when you see economic conflict, or if you see things that are limited in resource, that is an economic conflict. The second one we have is a value conflict. Ones where the personal ideologies of one person is going against another. Sometimes it could be very small of an issue. Sometimes it can be one which we call, say, a deal breaker or something, whether it's something political, maybe there's some sort of religious sort of conflict that's involved, maybe it's some sort of ideology and how one chooses to teach or do this or that. Just think of it in respect to that, quality versus quantity, those sorts of things. Maybe you got someone who's more laid back versus a go-getter, and you can see the personalities that will that can come to a head in that sort of situation. But think of that, value ones, they can kind of be very sensitive. They can be explosive if not handled correctly, and things can go bad very, very quickly if it happens to be a subject that is very touchy and sensitive to others and such. So tread lightly with these and make sure that you're given a lot of consideration and thought how to try to navigate through these. The third one and the last one is social or power conflict, which you can most obviously assimilate it to social groups, things of that nature, things between individuals that have formulated certain factions within, and you see teams within that and such. Sometimes, or it could be like one team versus another team, or things of that nature, Republicans and Democrats, seniors versus underclassmen. Sometimes you get situations where new coaches come into a team. You still have players that are still loyal to the previous coach, and whatever the new coach does, they're not going to fall in line with, or they're in disagreement with. And then you got the new players that are coming on and such, and or the younger ones that are buying into the new coach, and all of a sudden you've got a locker room that's divided and such. So think of power conflict as group conflict, and where the certain factions may lie within that. So the various types of conflict can also be kind of considered an extension to the power conflict and what I was mentioning and such. And this also kind of goes back a little bit to our group dynamic, the fundamental lesson that we had there in the video. So in this, you can see there's 4 different types. We have interpersonal, which kind of is related to groups, leaders in a sense, where it's one-on-one. So when you see personal, think of one-on-one situations, as opposed when you see group, you're seeing factions in a sense. and the disagreements that are taking place between those two groups. So interpersonal kind of maybe a good example, maybe the drum major for the band or something like that, and the head cheerleader. Maybe they have some conflict about who's supposed to be on the field during halftime at what point and doing what routines and such, and maybe they're not in agreement in that respect. Maybe the songs and the theme don't line up, and they're having difficulty to making decisions for their own group. Intrapersonal, so think of it this within, as interpersonal, you got two groups, two people, conflict. Intrapersonal is one group, two individuals within the same group and such. So interpersonal, maybe that's the president and the vice president aren't getting along and such. Now, intergroup, that is two separate groups that are going in a conflict with one another again. So that may be the drill team and the cheerleaders and such, kind of going back to that halftime example of a football game and such. And they're not getting along. And with that, the whole group of the drill team, the dance drill team, and the whole group of the cheerleaders aren't getting along. Or maybe they're conflict because one of them thinks they're better than the other or something like that. Where the cheerleaders can do all these different yells and such, and the positivity and enthusiasm that they show. But maybe they don't have as much rhythmic coordination and such, and maybe the drill team is making fun of them for that. So I don't know. Hopefully you get the point there. And then lastly is intragroup. So you're seeing, again, conflict, factions within a group against each other. So the same group. So maybe you've got a team of basketball players and the seniors for one reason or another against the underclassmen. And within that, you have a divided locker room. So with that, you've got one group. You've got two separate groups within one group and such, and there's conflict because of it. Alright, so a little bit more about conflict and having to deal with not just groups but individuals, and more on a one-on-one level, and being able to understand how this individual deals with it. And each one of us have a particular conflict style that we sort of default to. And I encourage you to kind of think about it and which one am I? And knowing which one that you are and understanding how to use it, and knowing that maybe you're not contributing to the problem, but instead trying to be a part of the solution and such to the issue that's at hand. Now, there's 5 different types. The first one is competitive. These people tend to take a very firm stand, and they know what they want, and they often operate from a position of power and draw from things like position, rank, expertise, or their persuasive ability. This style can be very useful in situations where there's an emergency or quick decisions need to be made, but it also can be unpopular at times when there's more time and you need consensus from the group and such. So some people can feel like they're being walked over or whatnot, and they're felt like they're not being heard or something of that nature. Then secondly, there's collaborative. These people tend to work to kind of meet the needs of all the people involved. They can be highly assertive, but unlike the competitor, they cooperate effectively and acknowledge that everyone is important, trying to get input from them. They can be very useful when you're trying to bring together a number of different viewpoints to resolve and to get to a solution. But sometimes because of that, it can kind of be slow moving because they're so concerned about getting everything right with everyone and such. Third is the compromising. These individuals prefer to try to find a solution that will at least partially satisfy everyone. Everyone is expected to kind of give up something to get something in return and things. And the cost of conflict is higher than the cost of losing ground. So you want to try to make sure that everyone is meeting and kind of getting a portion of their goal or their situation and such is resolved, and because of that. This is usually effective in situations where you got deadlines that are looming and that you must get something done, and it's and trying to effectively reach everyone's needs and such. However, because of this, um, there may be situations where the quality may be sacrificed of it. Accommodating this individual, or these, they try to, very willingness to meet the needs of others, and which is good and all, but sometimes they're doing it at the expense of their own needs and such. So you see these people, they're kind of, they're really may be abused at some point. Some people may see them as being pushovers, and when they want to get their way, they know with this sort of individual that they will most likely get it and such, because the individual is just going to be accommodating to their needs, and they know that they're not going to really give up much, or give much of a fight up to it. And the last one is the avoiding. These individuals, are completely trying to evade any sort of conflict. They're not trying to upset anyone or anything. They feel like when things are possibly very trivial in a sense, they're just not going to even be a part of the decision and such. But this is also going to be seen as a weakness and such, and also can be a cause for conflict, because when people are trying to seek a resolution between the group and you're avoiding it, that can be a point of frustration for others who are trying to get to resolve the issue. So benefits of conflicts is, a lot of these points have kind of been talked on before and sort of rehashed in a sense. So I just really want to reiterate them in this slide. Strong relationships, having the communication within individuals, and the more communication in which you have, and the strong relationship in which you have with those individuals, the better the conflict can be, and the better and quicker in which you can move through it, and moving on to the next point, solve the problem and such, which is ultimately what you want to do. You're going to encounter them, you're going to have issues, let's get through them, let's work it out, hash it out, and let's move on to the next productive item. So third, sort of reduce tension, by having, all these conversations and airing out your grievances, and if they're able to be managed in a very responsible way, everyone will feel better about the situation. And because of that, you will then have an increased understanding within the group. Everyone will understand what they're thinking, and they're voicing their concerns, and they feel like they're being heard and managed properly. And because of that, everyone will feel better about the situation, and just as well as we'll have a better understanding to what is trying to be accomplished by all those involved. And then lastly, having a better product, having something at the end in which you can be proud of, and that you feel like everyone's contributed to in some fashion. But also, as what we talked about before, is continuing to refine the product and to get better. If you kind of just sit on your hands and what you've done in the past, and no one wants to suggest any sort of improvements, then obviously you're not going to get better in that respect. Well, here we have in this slide is interest-based relational approach and such, and this type of conflict resolution respects the individual differences while trying to help people avoid becoming too entrenched in a fixed position and that they may have. So trying to remain open-minded about alternatives and things, and at the same time trying to have and discuss things without hurting the feelings of others and feeling as they're involved. The first one is make sure that good relationships are the first priority. So try treating the others calmly, and that your goal is to build a mutual respect between you and the other party. You want to do your best to be courteous to one another and remain constructive under pressure. So you don't want to be saying things that are destructive to the situation, that are not helpful and putting others down, but instead that are factual and are contributing and bringing out the issue to the forefront. Keep people and problems separate. So, and a lot of times it becomes easy to judge others and for their actions and decisions based on your previous encounters. Try to understand and what the differences that lie between the parties, and with that, trying to separate the person who has the issue with the issue, and that you're only looking at the issue and such. Third is kind of pay attention to the interests that are being presented. So, trying to understand why the person is taking his or her position to a particular problem. Then listen first and talk second. So, you kind of want to make sure that you understand where they are coming from before you start to try to defend your own position or the position of another individual. And then second to last is set out the facts. So between you and the other party, or you between the parties, identify clearly what is a fact, what is the issue, and what is the root problem that we're trying to resolve in some ways. A lot of times conflict continues and will carry on because the actual issue is not being addressed, and that's because they haven't taken the time to sit there and talk about it and see where the differences actually lie and how to go about possibly resolving it. And then lastly is kind of exploring the options together, understanding what's available and how to go about trying to come up with solutions that will address both sides effectively, and will lead to an outcome that each group can be happy with. So here's also another process you may try to use. Other one being more interest-based and such, and kind of centered around that. This one, we're trying to deal with conflict and trying to manage the personalities within the group, and helping us to understand how we can get to a formidable sort of solution that everyone can be happy with. Step one is kind of set the scene, understand what the conflict is, or and having a situation, an environment where it can take place effectively and such. So one of the things I always talk about is not dressing an individual down in front of others. I'm not going to sit there and put one person down to embarrass them or to dress them down in front of other groups, because that is not a productive situation. If I have something to say to someone, I'm going to take them behind the scenes, individually, one-on-one, and I'm going to air out my concerns to them personally. I don't need to talk behind their back. I don't need to talk in front of a group or something like that. I need to talk directly to them if I wish to solve the problem. Now, if it's a group problem, then that's perfectly okay to bring that out and to get the sort of opinions from them. But remember, the environment, how you're going to set the environment, and what's going to be a good way to discuss it and such. Secondly, you want to begin gathering information. You want to get as much clues as you possibly can, and as much facts to the situation that will help you to identify what the actual issue or issues are. And then third, agree on the issues, the problem and such. Fourth, we're going to brainstorm for possible solutions and come to an agreement that both parties can be happy with. And then lastly, you're going to negotiate that and such. So, from the brainstorming, you have the solutions, and then, lastly, you're going to negotiate, be happy with what you're trying to go through. Keep in mind that, you may not, whatever you come up with may not work in the beginning, but that's where the communication is key in being able to address whatever issues that are still that are affecting the situation, and you may have to come back and go back to the drawing board and such. But as long as you have the communication and that your willingness to talk and be open-minded to the sort of criticisms that other may have, then you certainly have a lot of room in which you can grow from it. Lastly, what we have here is our conclusion. So just some things I want to leave you with. Remember, conflict is good. Conflict is bad when you let it to fester and such, and where the communication breaks down. And that's when you know that conflict is no longer productive for you. Secondly, understand the dynamics, understand the individual dynamics, understand the group dynamics, and try to think of how to best approach the situation, and make sure it's being handled in the proper environment and such. Third, step back, understand the real issues. A lot of times problems continue to carry on because people don't understand this, and they're addressing concerns that really are not making a difference or are not solving the grievances in which one individual has against a person or another group. And then lastly, communication is key to resolving. Making sure whatever form in which you're using, whether it's in person, whether it's, I really discourage texting and such, and even email can be good to some extent, but you have to be conscious of the sort of tone in which you're using. When you're using communication in a form in which you can't really see your face, your gestures, your mannerism things, you have to be very conscious of the sort of tone in which you're using and the words and such, because that can only exacerbate a situation and create for you. Well, I hope you really enjoyed the lectures for this class and the information that's been distributed through these videos. I've had such a tremendous joy in putting them together, and I'm extremely happy with how things have gone, and looking forward to this class and wrapping it up with you guys. So thank you so much for being a part of Avant Garde Prep and taking this leadership development course. Bye-bye.